Imagine this: you wake up one morning, ready to live another normal day. But by the time the sun goes down, your whole life is flipped upside down. Not because of an accident, not because of bad luck, but because of something your own family did. A secret plan, a painful betrayal, and a decision that changed everything. This is not just a story about family drama. This is about trust, about loyalty, and about how far someone will go when they feel left out, disrespected, or pushed aside. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you think twice about the people closest to you. My name is Emily Parker. I am 32 years old, and for most of my life I believe that family always came first. Growing up, I thought my parents, my sister, and I were close. We didn't have a perfect life, but we had birthdays together, family dinners, holiday gatherings, and all those little moments that you think will last forever. But as time went on, things started to change, and the bond that held us together began to feel weaker. The change didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly, in small ways, almost too quiet to notice. But by the time I did notice, it was already too late. It all started when my mom and my sister began planning a huge family event. It was supposed to be the kind of celebration where everyone comes together. Kids running around, balloons in the air, food spread across long tables, laughter echoing through the house. My mom and sister put their energy, time, and money into this event. They made lists, ordered decorations, booked activities, and even hired a caterer. The guest list was long, over 100 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, even distant relatives we barely ever spoke to anymore. Everyone was included. At least that's what I thought. I was helping my daughter, Lily, frost lemon muffins in the kitchen that morning when I first realized something was off. The party was happening at my mom's place. The cars were already pulling up outside. I could hear the music starting in the distance. My phone buzzed with notifications from family group chats, filled with excited pictures of balloons, a bouncy castle, and even a couple of ponies for the kids to ride. But something strange stood out to me. My daughter, my sweet little Lily, the light of my life, hadn't been invited. Out of more than 100 people, out of dozens of children, my child was the only one not on that list. First, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe my mom or my sister just forgot to send the invite. But as the hours passed and as I kept checking my phone, I realized it wasn't a mistake at all. It was intentional. They had left my daughter out on purpose. Now, I need you to understand something. Lily is only 8 years old. She loves animals, she loves coloring books, she loves to laugh, and she has the biggest heart you could ever imagine. She has never hurt anyone, never done anything wrong. So when I saw all the pictures of kids at the party, kids bouncing around, riding ponies, eating cotton candy, and I realized Lily was sitting at home, decorating lemon muffins with me, completely unaware that she had been excluded, my heart broke. I didn't make a scene. I didn't grab my phone and call my mom. I didn't yell at my sister. I didn't post angry messages on social media. Instead, I smiled at Lily, handed her a spoonful of frosting, and said, "These muffins are going to be the best ones we've ever made." Inside, though, my mind was racing. Why would my own mother and my own sister do this to us? What had I done wrong? What had my daughter done wrong? That night, after Lily went to bed, I sat in the quiet of my living room. I looked at my phone again, scrolling through more pictures of the party I wasn't invited to. There was my mom laughing with relatives. There was my sister posing with balloons. There were children everywhere, smiling, running, enjoying a day filled with joy. And then there was me. Or rather, there wasn't me. That was the night I realized something had shifted permanently in my family. And instead of begging for answers, instead of crying into my pillow, I made a decision. I decided I was going to do something about it, but not in the way you might expect. I didn't plan to scream, I didn't plan to fight. I planned to be calm, to be patient, and to make sure that my mom and my sister understood just how deeply they had hurt me, without me ever raising my voice. 3 weeks later, that decision changed everything. My sister, who had been so proud, so loud, so confident in her choices, was forced to leave town. And the crazy part? I didn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was make one very smart move. But before I tell you what that move was, let me take you back a little bit. Because to really understand why this hurt so much, and why my decision was so powerful, you need to know the history of my family. When people see a family from the outside, they often see only the smiles in photographs, the hugs at reunions, the laughter at birthdays. But what they don't see are the cracks. The small arguments, the little jealousies, the feelings that pile up one on top of the other, until the weight becomes too heavy to carry. That was my family. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where everybody knew everybody. My mom, Linda, was the kind of woman who wanted to be admired. She liked to be the center of attention, the one everyone praised. My dad, Mark, was the opposite. He was quiet, hardworking, a man who believed in peace more than conflict. Then there was my younger sister, Sophie. From the time she was little, she was the golden child. The one who got the most attention, the most compliments, the most chances to shine. And me? I was the older daughter who tried to keep everything together. I was responsible, dependable, but somehow always invisible. It wasn't that my mom hated me. It was just that she seemed to prefer Sophie. If Sophie wanted new shoes, she got them. If Sophie wanted to quit a hobby, it was fine. If I wanted something, I had to earn it. If I wanted to quit, I was told I wasn't trying hard enough. Back then, I didn't complain much. I thought maybe that was just how families worked. Maybe every family had favorites. Maybe every child had to fight for love. But over time, the difference grew. I still remember one night when I was 15. I had just gotten home from school, tired after a long day. Sophie had left her homework undone, and when Mom saw it, she asked me to help her. I sat with Sophie for hours, walking her through math problems, explaining things over and over. She didn't pay attention. She rolled her eyes. She scribbled on her notebook. Finally, I got frustrated and said, "Sophie, can you please just try for once?" My mom overheard that and snapped at me. "Emily, don't talk to your sister like that. She's trying." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "No, she's not trying. I am. I'm the one staying up, giving my time, being patient." But instead I kept quiet. That's how it always was. If Sophie messed up, I got blamed. If Sophie cried, I got lectured. If Sophie succeeded, she got praised, and somehow I was invisible again. Years later, when I had my daughter Lily, I thought maybe things would change. I thought maybe my mom would finally see me as a mother, as someone who mattered, as someone who deserved the same love Sophie had always been given. But instead, the favoritism continued, just in a new way. My mom doted on Sophie's kids. She spoiled them with gifts, attention, sleepovers, and trips. But with Lily it was different. My mom always had excuses. She was too busy, she was too tired, she had other plans. And Sophie? She never lifted a finger to include Lily. It hurt, but I kept telling myself it wasn't intentional. I told myself maybe my mom just didn't realize how much it stung. I told myself Sophie was too wrapped up in her own world to notice. But deep down I knew. I knew they noticed. They just didn't care. There were little fights over the years. Quiet arguments that faded but never disappeared. Like the time Sophie threw a birthday party for her son and didn't invite me until the last minute. Or the time Mom took Sophie and her kids on a beach trip, but didn't even tell me about it until I saw the pictures on Facebook. I tried to brush it off. I tried to keep the peace. But every time the pain cut deeper. And the worst part? They made me feel like I was crazy for even noticing. If I said something, my mom would shrug and say, "You're overreacting, Emily. You're too sensitive." If I asked Sophie why she left me out, she would roll her eyes and say, "It's not a big deal. Don't make drama." So I stayed silent. I swallowed my feelings. I let the resentment grow quietly inside me, because I didn't want to be labeled the difficult one. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't make pain disappear. Silence just buries it. Until one day it comes roaring back louder than ever. That's why, when I saw Lily left out of that party, something in me snapped. All those years of being overlooked, all those years of being told I was too sensitive, all those years of being blamed while Sophie got away with everything, it all came rushing back. And I knew then I couldn't stay quiet anymore. But before I could act, I found myself drifting into old memories. Nights when Dad would quietly pat my shoulder and whisper, "I see you, Em," even if no one else does. He was my anchor, the only one who truly balanced the scales. But when he passed away 5 years ago, everything fell apart. Without him, there was no one left to defend me. No one left to keep Mom and Sophie in check. That loss, combined with years of favoritism, had built a storm inside me. And now, with Lily being excluded, the storm was ready to break. 3 weeks later it did. But not in shouting. Not in tears. In something far more powerful. Something that made Sophie pack up and leave town, while I stood there calm, collected, and unshaken. And believe me when I say they never saw it coming. After the party ended, after Lily and I sat alone in the kitchen that evening, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wasn't going to give my mom or my sister the satisfaction of saying, "See? Emily is dramatic again." No, this time my response would be different. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the small dining table, and pulled out a notebook. Page after page I wrote. My hand moved fast, as if all the years of being silenced were finally pouring out of me in ink. I wrote down every single thing. The times Sophie left me out. The times Mom ignored Lily. The years of small cuts that no one else seemed to notice, but I remembered. I wrote it all down because I needed to see it in front of me. And once I did, the plan came to me. I wasn't going to beg for a place in their world anymore. I wasn't going to sit quietly and wait for an invitation. Instead, I was going to create something of my own. Something bigger. Something that would show everyone exactly how it felt to be left out. That's when I decided to host my own event. Not just any event. A gathering so warm, so inviting, so full of love and care, that the absence of Sophie and my mom would be impossible to ignore. I started planning right away. I rented a community hall, one that people in town often use for weddings and anniversaries. I ordered decorations, streamers, balloons, lights. I called a catering company to provide food, drinks, and desserts. And then, I made my guest list. It wasn't just friends. It wasn't just my side of the family. It was everyone. Cousins, neighbors, old classmates, coworkers. People my mom and Sophie always wanted to impress. People they worked hard to keep on their good side. I invited them all. But when it came to Sophie and my mom, I left their names off. Just like they had left Lily off. The day of the event, the hall was glowing. Music played softly in the background. Kids ran around with cupcakes in their hands, and laughter echoed off the walls. People hugged me, thanked me for inviting them, told me how wonderful it felt to see everyone together. And I smiled, because for once I was the one at the center. For once I was the one people looked at and said, "Emily, this is amazing. You really outdid yourself." But the real moment came later. As the night went on, whispers began to spread. A cousin leaned over and asked, "Hey, is your mom coming?" Someone else asked, "Where's Sophie? Didn't she get an invite?" I shrugged politely, my voice calm. No, they weren't invited this time. That single sentence traveled like wildfire. By the end of the evening, everyone knew. Everyone had connected the dots. The golden daughter and the proud mother had been excluded, just the way Lily had been excluded. And just like that, the balance shifted. By the next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. Cousins were asking me if everything was okay. Neighbors were saying they couldn't believe Sophie and Mom had done that to Lily. One of my aunts even called me, her voice full of quiet anger. "Emily, I never realized how often they left you out. You were right to do this." The tide had turned. But of course, not everyone was on my side. By noon that day, my mom called me 12 times. I didn't answer. I let the calls go to voicemail, each one angrier than the last. "Emily, what do you think you're doing? How dare you embarrass me like this? You are tearing this family apart." I sat on the couch, listening to her messages, sipping my coffee with a steady hand. For the first time, her words didn't pierce me. They slid off powerless. Sophie tried to. She texted me paragraphs filled with insults. "You're jealous. You're bitter. You ruined everything." But then as the hours passed, her tone shifted. By evening, her messages turned desperate. "Please, can we talk? Please don't do this." That's when I realized they weren't just angry. They were scared. Scared because their image was cracked. Scared because the family that had always sided with them was now questioning their choices. Scared because for the first time they weren't in control. And all I had done was mirror their behavior back at them. The following week was chaos. Family group chats blew up with arguments. Some defended Mom and Sophie, saying maybe I'd gone too far. Others defended me, pointing out how many times Lily and I had been pushed aside. It was like the curtain had finally been pulled back, and everyone could see the favoritism that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Mom stopped showing up to church for a while. Sophie avoided the usual family dinners. Their absence spoke louder than any words could. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't brag. I didn't rub it in their faces. I just carried on calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside I felt a shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the invisible one. I wasn't the scapegoat, the afterthought. I had taken control of my story, and no one could take that away from me. And yet, as much as it felt like justice, I knew this was just the beginning. Because when you shake a family tree, you don't just bring down one branch. You send shockwaves through every single root. The fallout was coming, and it was going to be bigger than anyone expected. The week after my event felt like living in the eye of a storm. On the outside, everything seemed calm. I went about my normal routine, dropping Lily off at school, going to work, cooking dinner at night. To anyone watching, life looked steady, ordinary. But beneath the surface, my phone buzzed nonstop. Group chats exploded with messages. Cousins whispered behind each other's backs. Old family wounds, ones we had all pretended didn't exist, suddenly ripped open like fresh scars. First, most people were just curious. They wanted the story, the details, the gossip. Why didn't you invite your mom? Why wasn't Sophie there? They asked as if they didn't already know the answer. I stayed calm. My replies were short, careful, deliberate. Lily wasn't invited to Sophie's party. I only did the same. And that was enough. Because deep down, everyone understood. But my mom didn't see it that way. She finally showed up at my doorstep one evening, her knock sharp, angry, impatient. Lily was in her room reading when I opened the door. There she stood, my mother. The same woman who had always looked right through me, who had always saved her warmest smiles for Sophie. Except now her face was tight, her jaw stiff, her eyes filled with fury. "Emily," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "What on earth have you done?" I closed the door slowly, leaned against it, and took a steady breath. "I did exactly what you and Sophie did. That's all." Her head snapped toward me. "Don't play games with me. You humiliated this family. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. People are talking, Emily. Do you realize what you've started?" I tilted my head, watching her pace around my living room like a caged animal. "You're upset because people are finally seeing the truth. That's not my fault." She froze, turning on me with that sharp glare I knew too well. "The truth? The truth is that you've always been difficult. You've always wanted attention. That's why no one likes being around you." Her words should have hurt. Years ago, they would have cut me to the bone. But now, they barely scratched the surface. I crossed my arms and spoke evenly, my voice steady. "No, Mom. The truth is that you've always chosen Sophie over me. And this time it hurt my daughter. That was your mistake." For a moment, silence filled the room. Her face twitched, her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. Because deep down she knew I was right. Finally, she grabbed her purse, stormed to the door, and hissed, "You'll regret this." Then she was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, breathing slowly, letting the weight of her words slide away. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, Sophie reached out. At first, she texted, "We need to talk." Then she called over and over until I finally picked up. Her voice came through shaky, fast, almost desperate. "Emily, why are you doing this to me? Do you know how hard things have been for me lately? Do you even care?" I kept my tone calm. "You didn't care when you left Lily out. You didn't care when you made her feel invisible. Why should I care now?" She went quiet, her breathing uneven. Then her voice cracked. "Because you're my sister. We're supposed to be on the same side." I closed my eyes for a moment, shaking my head. "We were never on the same side, Sophie. Not when Mom put you on a pedestal. Not when you laughed while I got left behind. You chose your side years ago." She tried again, softer this time. "Emily, please. People are saying things. They're whispering about me, about Mom. Do you know what that feels like?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Yes, Sophie. I know exactly what that feels like. Because that's been my whole life." The call ended with silence. She didn't hang up in anger this time. She just stopped speaking. And then came the extended family. At the next church gathering, the tension was so thick you could feel it the moment you walked in. People glanced at me, then at Mom, then at Sophie, whispering in low voices. My Aunt Carol pulled me aside, her voice low but firm. "Emily, I want you to know I see you. I always saw how they treated you. I just didn't speak up. I'm sorry for that." Her words warmed me, even as guilt flickered in her eyes. But not everyone felt that way. My Uncle James made it clear he was on Mom's side. "You went too far," he muttered, shaking his head. "Family is family, Emily. You don't air dirty laundry like this." I smiled faintly, replying, "Funny, Uncle James. Because they had no problem airing mine for years. The whispers grew louder with each passing day. Cousins who once worshipped Sophie started pulling away, confused by the cracks in her perfect image. Neighbors who admired my mom's family values began asking questions she didn't want to answer. It was like a glass house finally shattering, each crack spreading further, impossible to hide. And yet, I didn't dance on the pieces. I didn't celebrate. I just stood quietly watching the truth reveal itself. But the more the truth spread, the more isolated my mom and Sophie became. And isolation, I realized, can do strange things to people. Because when the storm finally hit its peak, it wasn't just words anymore. It was something far bigger, something none of us could ignore. Started with a phone call. My Aunt Carol, the one who had pulled me aside at church, was the first to suggest it. "Emily," she said, her voice soft but steady, "this can't go on like this. The family is splitting in half. People don't know what to believe. I think we all need to sit down together." First, I wanted to say no. The idea of sitting across from my mother and Sophie felt impossible. But something in Carol's tone made me pause. Maybe this was the only way to finally bring everything into the open. So I agreed. A week later, the meeting was set. It wasn't at my house. It wasn't at Mom's either. Carol offered her living room as neutral ground. That Sunday afternoon, I walked in holding Lily's hand. Her little fingers were wrapped around mine, her grip tight. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with worry. "Mom, will it be okay?" I squeezed her hand and smiled gently. "Yes, baby. Whatever happens, we'll be okay." Inside, the atmosphere was thick, almost suffocating. Most of the family was already there. Cousins sat on the couch, uncles leaned against the wall, aunts whispered in corners. Everyone was waiting for the storm to start. And then my mother walked in. Sophie was right behind her. They didn't sit down immediately. Instead, Mom stood tall in the center of the room, her chin lifted, as if she wanted to show strength. Sophie clung to her side, her face pale, her lips pressed together in a tight line. The room went silent. Finally, Carol cleared her throat. "All right, let's get to it. We're here because things have gone too far. Words have been said, feelings have been hurt, and people are choosing sides. That's not what family is supposed to be." No one spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and sharp. So I broke it. "I didn't want this," I said quietly, my voice steady but strong. "All I wanted was for my daughter to be treated like she mattered. That's it." Mom snapped her head toward me. "Emily, stop playing the victim. You've always made everything about yourself." I took a deep breath, letting her words hang in the air for a moment before responding. "This isn't about me. This is about Lily. She was the only child left out of Sophie's party. Do you know how that feels? To watch your little girl cry because her own family made her feel invisible." For the first time, the cousins shifted uncomfortably. Some of them glanced at Sophie, who was staring at the floor. Carol leaned forward, her voice firm. "Sophie, why did you leave Lily out?" Sophie swallowed hard. Her hands twisted in her lap. I don't know. I thought it would be easier," Mom said. Her voice trailed off, and she glanced nervously at our mother. The entire room turned toward her. Mom's jaw tightened. "Don't you dare put this on me." But Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "It was you, Mom. You said it would be better if I kept it small. You said Lily didn't need to be there. You told me she's always been different." A sharp gasp rippled through the room. A few aunts shook their heads. One cousin muttered under their breath. I felt a wave of anger rise in me, but I didn't shout. Instead, I spoke calmly, clearly, so that every person in that room could hear. "This is exactly what I've lived with my whole life. Mom always decided I didn't belong. And now she's doing the same to Lily. History repeating itself." Mom's face flushed red. She pointed at me, her finger shaking. "You're twisting things, Emily. You've always been jealous of Sophie. That's all this is, jealousy." The room buzzed with whispers. I stood slowly, my hand still resting on Lily's shoulder. "No, Mom. I'm not jealous. I'm tired. I'm tired of being treated like I'm not enough. And I won't let my daughter go through the same thing." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Uncle James, who had defended Mom before, finally spoke up. His voice was lower than usual, almost uncertain. "I have to admit, I remember things, the way Emily says. I remember how different Mom treated you, Emily, I just never said anything. More murmurs. More shifting. The air was changing. Mom's eyes widened, betrayal flashing across her face. James, you too? You're taking her side. But before he could answer, Carol stood up. Her voice was sharp now, louder than I'd ever heard it. Enough. This isn't about sides. This is about truth. And the truth is clear. Emily has been overlooked and disrespected for years. And now it's spilling over to her daughter. That's not family, that's cruelty. Mom's lips trembled. For a moment I thought she might break down. But instead she grabbed her purse, her movement stiff and angry. I don't have to sit here and be attacked. If you're all against me, fine. Sophie stood too, tears running down her cheeks. Mom, please. But she didn't listen. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her. Sophie stayed frozen in place, her shoulders shaking. Finally, she whispered, I didn't mean to hurt Lily. I didn't know how to say no to Mom. I looked at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to scream, to unleash every ounce of pain she had caused. But another part of me saw the little sister I had once loved, standing there broken and scared. So I spoke softly. It's not too late to change, Sophie, but you have to choose for yourself. You can't keep letting Mom control you. She looked up at me, her eyes red, her face pale. And for the first time in years, I saw doubt flicker in her expression. Doubt about Mom. Doubt about the pedestal she had been standing on her whole life. The meeting ended with silence. No resolution, no hugs, no forgiveness. Just silence. But for the first time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. It belonged to Mom. And that, I realized, was the beginning of her downfall. When the meeting ended, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like an earthquake. The ground had shifted, and nobody quite knew how to stand. I remember walking out of Aunt Carol's house holding Lily's hand, the evening air cool against my skin. She was quiet, too quiet for a little girl her age. Finally, she tugged at my arm and asked softly, Mom, are we still part of the family? That question broke me. I knelt down in the driveway, holding her face gently between my palms. Yes, baby, we are. But sometimes family doesn't act like family should. That doesn't mean we don't belong. It means some people don't know how to treat us the right way. She nodded slowly, but I could see in her eyes that the wound was deeper than words could heal. The next few days were strange. Normally, after a family event, there would be chatter, group messages, photos shared, gossip passed around. But this time, silence. A thick, uncomfortable silence hung over everyone. Then the calls started. Not from Mom. Not from Sophie. But from cousins, aunts, and even a few uncles. One by one they reached out. Some apologized for staying quiet all these years. Others admitted they had noticed the way I was treated, but never said anything because they didn't want to get involved. It was strange hearing people finally say what I had always known. For so long I felt invisible, and now suddenly I was being seen. But it wasn't just me. They were starting to see Lily too. One cousin dropped off a gift bag with art supplies saying, "This is for her. Tell her she's special." Another aunt invited her over for a playdate with her own kids, making sure to say, "This time of course she's welcome." It was bittersweet. On one hand, I was grateful people were showing kindness. On the other, I couldn't help but wonder, why now? Why did it take such a messy explosion for people to open their eyes? Meanwhile, word about the family meeting spread quickly. Small towns have a way of carrying stories, and ours was no different. At the grocery store, people whispered. At church, eyes followed me as I walked down the aisle. Some faces looked sympathetic, others judgmental. One afternoon, Pastor Miller pulled me aside. He spoke gently, choosing his words carefully. "Emily, I heard about what happened. Families are complicated, but I want you to know you and your daughter are loved here. Whatever anyone says, you have a place." Those words stuck with me. For years, I felt like even God was watching me from a distance, silent while I suffered. But hearing the pastor say that gave me a sense of strength I hadn't felt before. As for Mom, she didn't call. Not once. For weeks, I heard nothing from her. But I did hear about her. From neighbors, from relatives, even from Sophie's friends. They said she was angry, embarrassed, that she felt betrayed by the family. Some said she was avoiding church. Others said she was calling anyone who would listen, trying to paint herself as the victim. The image of my strong, unshakable mother, always in control, always holding the spotlight, was starting to crack. And for the first time I realized something. Maybe I wasn't the weak one all these years. Maybe she was. Sophie, on the other hand, surprised me. A few days after the meeting, she showed up at my house. She didn't call first. She just appeared at my door, her eyes red from crying. When I opened the door, my first instinct was to slam it shut. But Lily was right behind me, peeking out. So I stepped aside and let Sophie in. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she held a mug of coffee I had poured for her. For a while she didn't speak. Finally she whispered, "I'm sorry." 2 simple words. But I could tell how heavy they were for her. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you," she continued, her voice breaking. I thought I was just doing what Mom wanted. I didn't see what it was doing to you. To Lily. I was so blind." I stared at her, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to forgive her instantly, to grab onto the little sister I once adored. Another part of me wanted to guard my heart, to protect myself from being hurt again. So I said the only thing I could. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now, but I hear you. And I need you to prove that you mean it, not just say it." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I promise." That was the first crack in the wall between us. Small but real. The rest of the family shifted in strange ways. Some pulled closer to me, inviting me and Lily into their lives more than ever. Others pulled back, afraid of being caught in the middle of the storm. But the most shocking change came from Aunt Carol. She became bold, almost like the family's anchor. She started calling out unfairness openly. When someone tried to defend Mom, Carol shut it down quickly. We all saw what happened. "We're not sweeping this under the rug anymore." Her voice carried weight, and slowly people listened. It felt like a new chapter for the family. A messy one, yes, but one where the truth was finally being spoken out loud. At night, I would sit with Lily, brushing her hair as she got ready for bed. She asked a lot of questions. Why doesn't Grandma like us? Why did Aunt Sophie leave me out? Will things ever go back to normal? I never had the perfect answers, but I told her the truth in words she could understand. Sometimes people don't know how to love the right way, but that doesn't mean we're not worthy of love. It just means we have to choose better people to keep close. She seemed to understand, even if it was a lot for her young mind. And then one night, as I kissed her forehead goodnight, she whispered, "Mom, I don't care if Grandma doesn't love me. You do. That's enough." I walked out of her room with tears streaming down my face. She didn't know it, but her words healed something inside me. The aftermath of the family meeting wasn't neat. It wasn't tied up with a bow. It was messy, painful, and confusing. But it was also the start of something new. A shift in the family. A change in Sophie. A crack in Mom's armor. And for me and Lily, it was the beginning of freedom. After weeks of silence from my mother, the storm finally broke. It started small. A canceled church luncheon. A skipped Bible study. People whispered that she was not herself. But I knew the truth. Her carefully built image, the one she had polished for years, was cracking. For so long, she had been the woman everyone admired. The perfect hostess, the respected matriarch, the one who held the family together. But now, people were starting to see behind the curtain. And once people start to see, they can't unsee. One Sunday morning, I heard it from Pastor Miller's wife. She pulled me aside after service, lowering her voice so others wouldn't hear. "Your mother didn't show up today," she said, worry mixed with judgment in her tone. "She said she wasn't feeling well, but, Emily, I've known her for years. This isn't like her." I just nodded. I didn't have the heart to explain what was really going on. But deep down I felt something strange. Not joy, not satisfaction, but relief. Relief that I wasn't the only one carrying the truth anymore. Others were beginning to see the cracks for themselves. Meanwhile, Sophie kept trying. She sent texts, little check-ins. She dropped off small gifts for Lily. One day, she even offered to babysit so I could have a break. First, I resisted. I was scared of trusting her again. But slowly I allowed it. And to my surprise, she showed up. She kept her promises. Lily warmed up to her. And I could see Sophie trying to make up for lost time. But every time I saw them laughing together, a shadow of my mother's influence hung over us. I couldn't forget that Sophie had once been Mom's ally, the one who helped carry out her cruelty. Still, I reminded myself people can change. Maybe Sophie was proof of that. Then came the turning point. It was a Wednesday evening. I was helping Lily with homework when my phone buzzed. It was Aunt Carol. "Emily, you need to come," she said urgently. "Your mother's here. She's causing a scene." My heart dropped. When I arrived at Carol's house, I could hear the shouting before I even stepped inside. My mother's voice, sharp and furious, echoed through the living room. "You all betrayed me," she screamed. "After everything I've done for this family, after all the dinners, the holidays, the sacrifices, I built this family, and now you all take her side? Her." She pointed at me the second I walked in. Her eyes burned with rage, wild and desperate. For a moment I froze. It was like stepping back in time. Back to being a little girl, back to feeling small and powerless under her glare. But then something shifted. I wasn't that little girl anymore. I stood tall, meeting her eyes without flinching. "You didn't build this family, Mom," I said quietly but firmly. "You controlled it. You used fear and favoritism to keep everyone in line. That's not love. That's manipulation." Gasps filled the room. Some relatives looked down, others exchanged nervous glances. But no one rushed to defend her this time. My mother's face twisted in anger. "How dare you?" "No," I cut her off. "How dare you? How dare you make my daughter feel unwanted? How dare you pit me against my sister? How dare you make me believe for years that I wasn't enough? I won't stay silent anymore." The room went quiet. For the first time in my life, I saw something in my mother's eyes I had never seen before. Not anger, not superiority, fear. After that night, things unraveled quickly. Mom stopped showing up to family events altogether. Invitations that once went to her by default now went to Aunt Carol instead. Holidays shifted. Gatherings changed. She tried to call some relatives to win them back, but fewer and fewer people answered. The power she once held, the grip she had on everyone, was slipping away. And she knew it. One afternoon, I got a call from a neighbor of hers. "Emily," she said gently, "I think your mom could use a visit. She's been different lately. She doesn't come outside much. She doesn't wave like she used to." I thanked her, but I didn't go. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew deep down my mother had to face the consequences of her actions herself. I wasn't going to save her this time. Still, the downfall wasn't easy to watch. This was the woman who once filled a room with her presence, now reduced to whispers and rumors. This was the woman who had commanded respect, now avoided by many. And yet, part of me felt pity. She had built her life around control, around being the center of attention. Without that, who was she? A lonely woman sitting in a quiet house, surrounded by her trophies of past glory. But no warmth, no laughter, no family. The most painful moment came a month later. It was Lily's birthday. We had a small party at home, filled with love and laughter. Sophie came, Aunt Carol came, even some cousins brought gifts. For once, the house was full of joy instead of tension. But in the middle of it all, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I found my mother standing there, holding a small wrapped box. Her eyes were tired, her posture slouched. She looked smaller. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. The room went silent when she stepped inside. Lily looked at me, unsure of what to do. My mother walked over, handed her the box, and whispered, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." It was the first kind word she had ever said to my daughter. Lily opened the gift. It was a simple doll. Nothing fancy, nothing grand. But Lily's face lit up, and she hugged it tightly. Then, without warning, she hugged my mother. Everyone in the room froze. For a brief second, I saw something flicker across my mother's face. Guilt, regret, maybe even love. But it was fleeting. She pulled away quickly, muttered something about needing to go, and left. The door closed behind her, and the room exhaled. That was the last time she tried to step back into our lives. From that day on, she disappeared more and more. Her downfall was complete. Not through revenge, not through screaming matches, but through silence. She had built a kingdom of fear. And when fear no longer worked, she had nothing left. And as painful as it was to watch, it was also freeing. Because for the first time I realized her downfall wasn't my burden. It was hers. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, of turning pain into lessons, of making what once felt unbearable easier to carry. It's been months since that final birthday party, since the last time my mother stepped into our lives. And in those months, everything has shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in quiet, steady ways. Our home feels different now. Warmer. Lighter. There is laughter in the walls again. There are movie nights with popcorn, messy art projects spread across the kitchen table. Songs sung off-key but sung with love. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't feel like one wrong word or one wrong move will bring the house crashing down. Instead, I feel safe. And so does Lily. I've watched my daughter blossom. The little girl who once asked, "Why doesn't Grandma like me?" no longer carries that weight. She runs, she laughs. She dreams big dreams without doubting her worth. It's amazing, really, how removing one toxic voice can change everything. Children know when they are unwanted. They may not always say it out loud, but they feel it. And when that weight is lifted, they bloom. That's what I see in Lily now. A child blooming. Sophie and I are still rebuilding too. It isn't perfect. Sometimes old memories creep in. Memories of her siding with Mom. Of her words that cut me deeply. But I remind myself that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to move forward one step at a time. And step by step, we're finding each other again. Sometimes we talk late into the night, just like we used to as kids. We laugh about silly things, we share stories, we even cry about what we lost. It doesn't erase the years of hurt, but it builds something new. Something real. As for my mother, she's a shadow now. I hear bits and pieces, how she keeps to herself, how her health isn't what it used to be, how the neighbors rarely see her anymore. Sometimes I wonder if she regrets it all. If she lies awake at night replaying her choices, realizing what they cost her. Other times I remind myself it doesn't matter. Whether she regrets it or not, her story is no longer mine to carry. For years I tried to win her approval. For years I tried to bend myself into whatever shape she wanted me to be. For years I believed her voice was the truth. But not anymore. Her downfall was not my doing. It was the natural end of the life she chose to build. And my healing is not tied to her anymore. It's mine to claim. There are still moments when the past creeps in. When I hear a mother's sharp tone at the grocery store and flinch without meaning to. When Lily asks me questions about family that I don't quite know how to answer. When I dream about childhood and wake up with that same old heaviness in my chest. But healing isn't a straight line. It's a path with bends and turns, sometimes even circles. The difference now is, I'm not walking it in fear. I'm walking it in freedom. And every step feels lighter than the one before. One night after Lily was asleep, I sat outside on the porch with a cup of tea. The air was cool, the stars scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns. I thought about everything we had been through. The fights, the betrayal, the silence, the downfall. And then I thought about where we are now. Safe, together, stronger. A thought came to me then, quiet but powerful. Sometimes losing someone isn't really a loss. Sometimes it's the beginning of finally finding yourself. For so long I believed I needed my mother to love me, to validate me, to make me feel whole. But I don't anymore. I am whole on my own. And my daughter will grow up knowing that love isn't conditional. That family isn't about control. That respect is earned, not demanded. That cycle ends here. With me. Looking back, I realized something important. My mother's downfall wasn't just the end of her control. It was also the beginning of my freedom. And while I wouldn't wish the pain we went through on anyone, I can say this with certainty. It shaped me. It made me stronger. It made me more determined to be the kind of mother who lifts her child up, not tears her down. So yes, the story ended with her silence, her absence, her decline. But my story, the story of me and Lily and even Sophie, didn't end there. It began. Today, if you walked into our home, you wouldn't see the shadow of what we went through. You'd see love. You'd hear laughter. You'd feel peace. And that to me is victory. Not revenge, not payback, not proving a point. Just peace. Because peace is the greatest revenge of all. And so, if you've ever felt small under someone else's shadow, if you've ever questioned your worth because of someone's cruelty, if you've ever wondered if you'll ever be free, let me tell you this. You will. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But little by little, step by step, you'll break free. And one day you'll look back like I'm looking back now, and you'll realize that the person who tried to break you never truly won. Because you're still here. And you're stronger than ever.